Welcome to another Airbrush Asylum video. This is part 2 of the real fire with some skulls engulfed in it. This is a sample panel for a hot rod that I'll be doing later on this year. If you haven't already, be sure to check out part 1 so you can see how I got up to this stage in the artwork. So let's continue on with the artwork right now. Okay, so I'm using Molly Orange by House of Colour, and I'm going to work some of these highlights or glow back into the skulls. So pull them out again with this layer, and then I'll candy back over the top again. So the template that I'm using here is the Fire Tool mini set. So same as the ones that I've used for the flames, but just half scale. Going to use some of these curves just to get some defined edges. And I'm going to bring the fire in around there as well. I just want to sort of sharpen up a few little areas here and there. Add a little bit more detail as well now to the skulls, so just a couple of extra highlights and just to bring out a bit more definition. Add in some texturing as well. I'm going to use the Dispersion snap template by School of Realism for this. I'll just move it around, and that's just going to give me a little bit of texture. You can see there, just to build up some sort of texturing on the skulls. And mainly just on the highlighted edge. I don't want to go too crazy with this, but pick out some of those. Then I'm going brighter. Basically brighter on this side where it's the hottest part of the fire. Just added a little bit more reducer to that House of Colour Molly Orange mix. It's still a little bit thick for my liking. Now, I am using House of Colour. This is an automotive paint. For the purpose of the video, I'm not wearing a respirator, but I highly recommend that you do so. The reason I'm not wearing one is because I'm mic'd up, so I'm providing the instruction as I'm painting. to hopefully make it a better tutorial for you. But with all of my automotive artwork, I always wear a respirator, so keep that in mind. So wherever I want it to be sharper, I'm up close, and then I'm coming back further away from the surface and blending it out. I'm going to put a KANDY over this as well, so this is just another layer of fire, but I'm rendering the skulls as I go, because I want them to be immersed or engulfed within the flame. Get the dispersion template again. You can also move the template around, so that'll give you different effects. You can see there it's gives you a nice texture and not so focused on the fine dots. Some of these edges in as well, sharper to get a bit of contrast. So this is a sample panel. So just playing around with the different effect. Customers asked me to sample up a skull engulfed in the fire, and we're also doing this fire a little bit more orangey and red. So always a good idea, do some samples. That way you can really have a good look at how the finished result's going to look. So once I add this glow to all of the skulls, then I'll come back in and render the flames. Complete another layer using this Molly Orange, and then apply my KANDY back over that. So the process is very similar. I've got loads of video tutorials on flames on this channel, so if you want to just see one with fire only and not so much, you know, focus on the skulls, I mean, you can follow this and leave it out, or watch one of my other videos. Kind of like a mini dagger stroke here for these stretched out teeth. So I'm kind of building my, almost like a little mini dot, and then moving with the airbrush really quickly to create my dagger line. These don't have to be super detailed. They've got to look like they're, you know, obviously I want them to show up, but customer has asked for them to be relatively subtle within the fire, so just to, you kind of have to look to see them. They're going to be a little bit more obvious than that, but I want them to stand out. We can always back it off a little bit more. But once all this fire is done and they're buried within the flame, then the focus will still be the fire, but you can have these cool skulls hidden within. That's the plan anyway. Alright, so now, going back to our templates, we're going to start to build another layer of fire. Again, just continuing with our molly orange. And I'm not too concerned about the layer that I've finished, like the previous layer. So I'm not necessarily following that. I'm trying to build in a new one. Let's see, I've got some of that fire working over the top of that skull, which is pretty cool. So essentially I'm using the template, but I'm not reliant on it. And wherever you go brighter, obviously the candy is going to sit brighter on those sections. So I kind of map it in and then come back in and basically brighten up certain areas to have that base there for the candy to sit on top. It does take a little bit of practice to get real fire sort of looking cool with that flow, but don't give up. It kind of looks messy as you're working on it. But I remember my early attempts were very stenciled, so I focused way too much on the template. And look, it's a personal preference. Some people prefer that, so I thought it didn't look as good. So you got to do what works for you and your style, and sort of create your own little style out of it as well. I think the key is don't think about it too much either. I've seen students of mine attempt to do it and they sort of try and plan everything out, have all these reference images, and I find that if you just sort of freehand and flow with it, you get a more natural flame at the end of it. But that does take some practice, so you know, if you don't get results straight away, don't give it in. Like, don't give up. So I do hope that you're enjoying this video so far. If this is the first time watching one of my videos, then welcome. For all of our regular viewers, welcome back. And if you are getting value out of it, then feel free to hit like and share this out, and let's build this airbrushing community together. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing Been doing 2 videos a week, and there's over 250 videos on this channel, so plenty for everyone to check out, and hopefully it helps to inspire you to create some better airbrush artwork. Just working back over the top of these to brighten them up. And you can see kind of the static is picking up some of the overspray. That's what the tack rag will remove. So we'll go and tack rag it again once I'm finished with this. This being the bulk of the fire too, I want that to be the hotter section, so I'm going to spray heavier over these parts. Give it a quick tack rag and see where we're at with it. You can see some of that's not really moving, but I'm not too concerned, because what will happen is some of those marks will just disappear once I candy over the top. Kind of just fuse back into the previous layers, but majority of that's been taken care of. I think I want to just add a bit more, like connect that back of the skull there to the fire. A couple of little bits and pieces can be a bit brighter, but I think we're almost ready for some orange candy. So you can see when you run the paint a bit thinner and you're up nice and close, you move quick with it, you can get these sort of wet strokes, which kind of gives the fire a nice sharp defined edge. So you can throw a few of them in. It takes a little bit of practice to be able to accurately put them where you want them, but you get the idea. I think now we're going to start with the Tangerine candy. So I'm going to put my respirator on now for the part when I apply the candy. Just going to be a lot of overspray, so I don't want to be breathing that in. So let's get into it. Okay, now I'm going to use a bright yellow. So this is House of Colour white mixed with yellow, and I've over reduced it so it's nice and thin. And I'm going to add a bit more highlights to the skulls, but before I do that, I'm going to build another layer of fire. So this time I'm going to start with the fire. I'm going to merge that into the skulls as well. And this will essentially give us a much brighter base. You can see how bright that is already. It almost looks like just white sitting on top of this molly orange. Again, brighter towards the front of the flame. I'm really going to start bringing in the interaction now with those skulls. Brighten up some of these embers as well. dot highlights on these. See how just a little bit connects that section, and we'll use that there. You can sort of see that's like a real gassy sort of lick, the hot part of the flame. So just join that one up a little bit. Work in this bulk of the fire. Alright, so we've got that layer on. Just give it a quick tack rag, and then I'll start to highlight the skulls. And I'm going to spray a yellow candy over this. So I want to go a bit sharper now with this tone and brighten up some of those bits of fire that are interacting with the skulls. See how you don't need a lot. and do some freehand texturing as well. Also still use the, I'm going to use the template again, just to pull out just a couple of key little bits of texture. That's enough. Bit of freehand over the top. Same thing with this skull. Add some texture to this skull. I forgot that in the last step. That's alright, we can add it now. Freehand over the top as well. Last one. Obviously the highlight, seeing that this is the hottest part of the flame, and I want to highlight that or point that out by adding my highlights in on this end. So obviously the opposite end, because the light, if you can imagine, the glow is coming through that way. So you're going to have the hot spot right around this part of the skull, and then also inside this part of the nostrils and eye sockets. So it's not going to be here because that's obviously three-dimensional, and that dips back in. So it's going to be less light and glow there and more on this edge, in case you were wondering and trying to work out how it's all tying in with the glow and the flame. So now a few freehand highlights as well over those templated areas, hitting that defined edge to brighten up again that side of the skull which is closest to the bulk of the fire. Only slightly hitting these bits just to pick up some highlight. So now just going to quickly tack rag again. And I'm going to seal that in now with the Spanish Gold KANDY. Okay, so now that this is dry, just make sure it is. Another tack rag, and then I'm going to hit it again with some Intercoat clear, just to seal off that yellow. Okay, so still a bit wet there. So I'm going to wait a bit longer. Okay, so just continue with that tack rag. Let it dry a little bit more. That's what happens when you rush. Luckily, it only slightly damaged the bit in the skull, which I can fix. But lesson learnt. Don't rush your artwork. Take your time. Now that that's done, I'm going to put another coat of INTERCOAT clear on. Okay, so this is where I'm going to leave it for part 2. Be sure to check out part 3. So obviously it's looking quite a bit yellow, and even though I said we're going to do more red and orange, but that's what I'm going to fix up in part 3. So I'm going to further detail the skulls, obviously finish off the fire, do another layer of flame, and make it a bit more orangey and red. But I do hope that you enjoyed checking out this video. By all means, check out some of the other videos and playlists that I've got listed here. And until next time, go grab your airbrush, do some amazing artwork yourself, and I'll see you again very, very soon in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.